This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. With me, as always, Mr. Roybal. How are you?
Hey there. Thank you for inviting me to the police podcast. So excited.
Always a pleasure to have you co-hosting, sir.
Oh, thank you. I feel so good when you say that about me. I feel worthwhile. My life is worthwhile.
Nothing feels better than saying it, I can say. So
no,
we're on the same page there.
Yeah. So this is going to be a good interview. I'm excited for this one.
Yes, we have a 18-year veteran out of Texas. He comes from a larger agency in Texas. His name is Keith. I think that's about as much personal info we're going to get out of him. He's going to keep himself a little bit hidden, which I understand he is active on the job. And he also hosts his own podcast called Cop Life Podcast.
Cop Life Podcast.
Mm-hmm. And it's more it's different than ours. It's more of like a diary. Like he does like the day-to-day of what police officers go through. It's pretty interesting.
That's cool because he will remember his career because I don't remember half of what I did.
Yes. It's true.
We didn't
heard you say before. I don't
then.
even remember any stories, and then you'll come up with this crazy story. I'm like, yeah, that is insane, Ken.
You know what? If you get me talking, I'll remember stuff. But just generally speaking, I don't. That was a long time ago. I don't even remember.
Understood. So, dial this guy in.
Yeah.
Dial in Officer Keith. Here we go. Flawless execution. Keith, welcome to the podcast, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks, Stephen. I appreciate the invitation.
You're on with me and my co-host, Ken Roybal.
Hey.
Yeah, good to be with you guys.
Good to have you.
Did he call you Stephen?
Did I? No, I called you Stephen.
No, I'm saying did he call you Stephen? Because I feel kind of formal now. I feel like I should be calling you Stephen.
Oh, no. I called you that because of the email address.
No.
Oh.
You're listed as Steven, so whenever it comes to me, so I'm like, I'm going to call you by the name listed on the email.
Keith is a Texas gentleman, so he's starting off.
That's right.
I try to be.
So, Keith, you are from a Texas agency. You're an 18-year veteran, and your agency, well, we're not going to share too much information about it, is one of the larger ones, correct?
That is correct, and next month will be 19 years.
Wow.
19.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
One more year and I can breathe a lot easier because that pension will be secured. So I'm trying to be very careful for one more year.
Yes. You, I noticed you, I read in your bio that you trained cops for about the first 10 years and you've probably had enough of that, huh?
Yeah. And what I did was I started in 2001 and around 2007 is when I became an FTO and trained until 2017. And then I just said, I think I'm done. I'm ready to hand it down to somebody else.
That's a lot of work. I remember working alongside field trainers at my buddies, and it's like when you're an FTO, it's like no slacking. You're trying to be a good example for the new guys, so that kind of cuts out a lot of chillaxing time in the cruiser.
Yeah, it does, and I mean, especially when you have a larger class and you're training on all 3 or 4 phases, and then you finally get that break. It's like being cut loose again because you get to get in your car, put your bag in the seat beside you again, and it's like, oh my gosh. Silence. I'm in the car by myself. I can do what I want to do now. And I'm not having to jump calls and making sure to get this guy or this gal as much exposure to everything as possible.
Hell yes. Now, the reason I found you is when I go on iTunes and I want to check if we have any new reviews, your podcast is always there being suggested to me for a while. It's always Cop Life Podcast.
Yeah, so, that's good to know.
Yeah, so finally I was like, I'm going to see what this podcast is about. And while it's very different than our podcast, it's very interesting because we kind of just get to know officers quickly and get their war stories and some other interesting things. Yours is more of a kind of a diary of what a cop's life is like, and I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, I chose that because, well, it kind of goes back to the whole reason I became an FTO. I used to see guys, and gals when they came out of training and they would do something stupid and I would complain and say, who trained you? Who taught you how to do this? And so my thought was instead of to sit here and complain about the problem, be a part of the solution. So I signed up to be an FTO. Kind of the same thing with the podcast. I mean, I sit around and I watch the way we're portrayed in national media And, the way that the cops get put down all the time, and it's always negative. And I said, I can sit here and I can complain about it, or I can do something. And so the idea of the podcast really started just to show, hey, look, here is what it's like from my perspective. Here's what we're seeing. Here's what we're thinking. Walk in our shoes for a little bit. And so that's what it started as, but it has really transitioned to a large audience of people that want to go into law enforcement. And I get emails on a weekly basis, questions. Hey, I'm going to apply at this agency. What can I do to be better? I've got this in my past. Will this hurt me or help me? How should I? And I get all these guys and gals that are wanting to become cops. And then, of course, I have a lot of law enforcement listeners as well. But it's kind of transitioned to both now. I'm trying to show our side of it and what life is like for us. And then I'm trying to help some of these that are wanting to get into the career.
There's interesting.
There's a lot of interest. I mean, Steve gets a lot of emails too from people that are interested in police work. They want to go into police work. And I think that this format has a lot of generates a lot of interest, because it's not just going, let me go to the internet and read about something, because you don't really get the what's what on the internet from reading in a forum or something like that. And I belong to one of the for years I belonged to one of these websites where it's all kinds of forums. You guys probably are familiar with it. It's pretty popular, but you go in there and there'll be young guys in there asking questions, or just people in general, and the officers seem kind of snarky. They can kind of jerks, But on this one, I think we're more open and discussing things. So I think this is a really good format for you guys to use to reach out to people.
Oh, I agree, and it's kind of funny because once I finally got it, I was wondering when it was going to happen, and I got an email from a guy who said, "Hey, I'm wanting to apply at such and such police department," which just so happened to be mine. And of course, I don't share that for obvious reasons. Right. I mean, we're not allowed to speak to the media without permission, and in this situation, I am the media, so I keep all department branding and all that stuff. I don't have any of that anywhere. And so I was like, "Oh yeah, well that's a good department." And one of the things I help teach in our academy is building searches. With every class, I'm one of the instructors for that, and then I run a scenario. And so I remember this kid's name when he emailed me. He actually got hired, and I remember seeing him come through the class, and I thought, I wonder if he's going to recognize my name or my voice or anything and say anything. He never did, but he may have been too intimidated just because I'm an instructor and he's just a lowly recruit.
Sure.
But yeah, I get it. And I had one listener said that his academy instructor made it their assignment to listen to my podcast. I was like, wow.
Oh,
tell him thank you.
Great advertising. All right. Tell him to add mine to that list. Come on.
Yeah, really.
That's awesome. Yeah. I noticed that in your comments and like Ken was saying, the same thing has been happening to us too. When I read your comments on YouTube, it's just thank you after thank you of people looking for more information or trying to get into it. And they're, you can tell you're really responsive, and you're answering their questions, and they're just so grateful.
Yeah, so far I've been able to, and in my most recent episode, I said, look, sometimes you may wait a week or two before I can sit down and get to it, because with email and with the social media accounts, I mean, I may see them immediately, but I just don't have the time to sit down right then and give a well thought out answer. And I sure don't want to give them just a short shrift, a blow off answer.
Sure.
So far I'm still able to respond to everybody, and I hope to keep that going, because I really want to help these guys and these gals, because my thing is, I'm going to retire one day. God willing, in 11 years, I'm done with this. And I want good people coming in behind us, because somebody's got to take over for us.
Yeah, you want good people responding to your house when there's a problem,
That's exactly right.
So, Keith, let's get into this. Let's hear some of your experiences. Could you
do it?
Could you tell us about the first time you went on a hot call, like your first call that got your adrenaline going?
Yeah, that was when I was in field training. And I'm just wide-eyed. I'm green. I'm on a side of town that's known for a lot of activity. And I was sitting down with my FTO. I actually had a classmate with me that was training with his FTO, and we were just sitting down to grab a bite. I think at a Burger King or something like that. And all of a sudden, when we get emergency calls, just like most departments, priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. And then there's an emergency call, and that's preceded by a tone, like an emergency tone that comes out, a loud beep. And you hear that, and of course, everybody perks up. Mm-hmm. And not far away from us was this massive fight going on in an apartment complex parking lot. And, we're not far away. We throw our food in the bag. We run to the car. We're heading out, and this fight involves this ends up being gang members. This involves knives. This involves guns. And so we jump in the car. We're running code 3 to get there. And I mean, the pucker factor is going because we're just like, oh my God, what are we going to do when we get there? Me and my classmate, of course, our FTOs were on it, but we're running code 3, lights and sirens. That's code 3 for us to get through traffic. We run into that thing. I mean, there's people everywhere, and you're talking about a green rookie that knows nothing. And we get out there, and I've got people running all around. We've got one guy on the ground, and he's covered in blood. He's dying, basically. Friends are screaming, don't die. And people all around us, we don't know who has the guns, who has the knives, and we're trying to get to this guy. And people are leaving, people are running, and I was overwhelmed. I mean, I'll tell you, my adrenaline was cranking. And now I could respond to that and have a plan and know what's going on. But I think back to my emotions then, and they were just crazy. We're pulling out our guns. We're, trying to keep an eye on about 100 people. Some of them are leaving, grabbing people. Who we grab? Who do we stop? What do we do? We end up, finding out that this kid he was stabbed with a knife so long that they saw it coming out on the other side, coming out his back. He was gutted, and blood everywhere, people everywhere. And I just remember that on that call is when I learned how to delegate, how to slow things down, and process the call. But this was intense to a green rookie that's only about 6 weeks into field training.
Was this at night?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this was at nighttime. I say sit down to lunch. Lunch for us was around 9 o'clock.
Yeah, what people don't realize is that when you get these calls and there's a multitude of people there and all you know is knife, gun, shots fired, someone down, when you get there, there's no like team jerseys. It's like there's not green shirts over here. We're bad guys. The red guys are this. It's everybody. It's chaos. And you don't know who's who or what's what, and people don't realize. And it's something you have to find out who the bad guys are in order to get into the call and then kind of separate people and see who's a threat and who's not.
Yeah. And, and this ended up being a murder. And when you got guys running around behind your back, you're taught in the academy, okay, security, keep your gun side away from people. Well, there's no keeping your gun side away from a crowd of people that's running all around you. And you don't know if you're going to get jumped because we're outnumbered. There's 4 of us, me, my classmate, and the 2 FTOs. Of course, we had other officers coming, but we were closer, so we got there first. And it was chaos. And like I said, all I remember is just the overwhelming intensity of that and how it affected me as a green recruit still in training. And yeah, I'll never forget that one.
Even as a 6-week-old rookie, though, did you find that you immediately went into training mode? You didn't really think about what you were supposed to do. You just went straight to your training.
Yeah, what I ended up doing on that, and I mean, I took the lead. I didn't need my FTO to hold my hand and guide me through it. He watched me, but I grabbed witnesses, and when I realized these weren't bad guys, these were witnesses, and I start jotting things down. I start getting on the radio, putting out the bolo or be on the lookout, giving the information of here's our suspect vehicle. This is what it looks like. And then I find out, hey, so we saw somebody throw a knife over that fence where all that brush is, and so I went back there hunting for evidence. I learned how to delegate things like, hey, can you watch this? Can you take care of this? Can you handle this part? And, that's what I told my rookies when I was training them. I said, look, I don't care what kind of call you're on when it's your call. I don't care if your backup is an officer that's a 30-year seasoned veteran. You tell them to do what you need them to do. Delegate it. This isn't all you. Slow things down. It's a lot like, and I would also explain this to my recruits. When a guy a college football player goes to the NFL, and usually in his first year, he sucks. I mean, he may have some moments of brilliance, but he's not going to be good because everything's overwhelming to him. And then you hear them talk about, well, as I got more into it, the game slows down. I'm like, that's the way it works out here. As you know what you're looking for, you've got that experience, the game slows down. The calls, everything slows down. You can start to process things. I mean, obviously it doesn't slow down, but you can process it faster. And right. You know what to do. And you go into that mode and your training kicks in. And I've been into the same type of situation before, and it did not overwhelm me nearly to the level that first one did. I've had gang fights break out around me before, and it's kind of just you go right into that mode. Your training kicks in.
Keith, I have to ask you. So this is your first hot call. Like it was intense. Clearly, Afterwards, was there any second thoughts about this career? Did you think for a moment, if this happens every shift, I don't know if I can do this for 25 years? Absolutely.
I remember I even addressed this in one of the episodes on my show. I called it The Fear Factor was the name of the episode. And I entertained serious thoughts of quitting at the time. And it wasn't just this call. It was because there were others in field training, but at the time my boys were little toddlers, and I would come home at night after incidents like this and think, God, I don't want to not be here. I don't want to take that knife in the back or that gun shot to the back of the head when I'm on a call like this and not be here for them. And I had struggled with some fear issues and some desire to get out. And I actually talked to my primary FTO about it, and we worked through it, and I'm glad I did. I mean, I'm overjoyed that I pushed through that difficult part. In fact, it's funny. I interviewed a police officer from Great Britain on my last episode, and he talked about when his training, he went through the same thing. He talked about a really hard part, and he almost quit, but he's glad he pushed through. And I could totally understand that because that's the way it was for me. I pushed through and was glad I did.
Yeah, that's like a lot more common than people think, especially in bigger agencies where you get these. I mean, there's a reason they're always hiring, because people get all the way through and get all the way onto the road, and then they go, you know what? No, thanks. I don't want to do this.
It never fails. We have a class because we have a steady stream of classes that come through, and there's always dropouts. I mean, There's people that get terminated because they just can't do it, but we have the ones that resign. It's inevitable with especially the bigger classes.
Yeah, Steve and I worked backgrounds for a while, and we'd always have these candidates come back, and I'm like, I did a background on you a year ago, and you got hired. Why are you here again? And then they always say, oh, you know what, family or something like that, whatever the reason is. That Steve, you remember these?
Oh yeah.
And then in real life, you're going, nah, you quit on probation. You didn't even get off probation. You quit. And we'd have to do the backgrounds. And normally when that happens, they don't hire them back if they quit before they finish probation.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, I don't know if we've had them come back in that situation. We did have one that I trained who I described him as unremarkable. I mean, he met the minimum standards, so I passed him on. And he'd already actually been cut loose. And then he quit, and he tried to come back, and they sought out all of his trainers' opinions, and I told him, I said, this guy's unremarkable. I said, he did not strike me as being a quality recruit. He met the minimum standards, and that's the only reason I passed him, but I recommend you don't hire him back, and they didn't.
Yeah, that's good. At least they're listening to you guys. I mean, Ken, I don't know if Keith will believe this, but this kind of blew me back working for LAPD backgrounds. You can actually appeal your disqualification and get it overturned and then get put back in the process. Like a background investigator and all the supervisors and cops can look at you and go, no, not good. You can appeal it, go talk to a civilian oversight board, and get put back in the process.
Yeah, it works the same way here.
Is it really?
I don't know if it's an official appeal, but there are times when you will have everybody on that chain saying no, but you'll have one person that's higher up that says, "No, keep trying, keep this."
There's a sheriff's department in Southern California, Riverside County Sheriffs, and there's other agencies that do this, but they specifically have you sign a waiver when you apply that says you will get zero feedback if you are not chosen. And what they do is they don't disqualify their candidates; they non-select them because you cannot appeal a non-select.
Smart.
Interesting. So I've never heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. No feedback. No. Hey, can I plead my case? None of that. You're once you're out, you're out, and they're not going to tell you what happened to get you to be there. But yeah, they don't have a DQ.
That's great. I mean, I wish we had something like that. But once they're terminated, that I haven't heard of them winning their job back. What I've always heard is the politics is somebody higher up said, no, keep trying. We've put people through 2 full versions of field training. Ours is we've changed over. It's kind of a A/B phase. Then they go to a mid phase for a week, and then they go to a C/D phase. And part of that, they're with a detective, and then the final week. But we've put people through that whole process 2 times over before, just because whatever reason, somebody said, no, keep trying.
It is amazing the processes involved. I mean, you'd think they're starting at you at 175 grand to get into this profession. You know what I mean?
I wish.
It's like, man, it's crazy.
If they want to pay me that, I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Keith on patrol.
Bring it on.
There's all kinds of stuff nowadays where you go, hey, this guy is, they're not going to cut it. They're not going to cut it in police work. They should not be here. And they go, okay, well, we need to go through step A through Z and to make sure, and we'll send them downtown and they'll have a remedial this and that and the other thing. You're going, the dude's he's not cut out to be a cop, man. But for some reason, must have been litigation down the road. Somebody sued and said, you sued me because of the color of my skin or whatever it was. Right. That they were fired, not because they were incompetent. And so now departments, they have to go through all this rigmarole to get rid of somebody.
Well, I know in our department, when we transitioned our FTO program, one of the things we had the recruits doing, because FTOs write an eval of every call. I would write up details on every call, what they did and where they did, what they did well, what they did wrong. But then they started making the recruits actually write, and that's part of their record. And they were basically criticizing themselves. And so if they ever tried to argue back or try to fight their termination, we got their own words. It's like, look, in your own words, you said you screwed this up. And look at all these times where you weren't advancing, you weren't progressing. You're going to make mistakes, but you got to learn from them and progress. You're not progressing, you're regressing, if anything else. And we've got it in your own words. So that I know they use that. Human Resources loved that.
Yeah, that's great. Give them something to go on.
How long is your probation over there?
It is, once you are cut loose from training, it's 6 months.
So
during that time, you can't. The academy is it was 6 months when I went through. I think the state has added some more things, so it's probably 7 months now. Just academy, and then field training is about another 4.5 months, I think.
Okay.
And so it's long. Then once they're cut loose from field training, it's 6 months on solo patrol. You're on probation. Can't work any part times. You can be terminated without recourse. So you got a 6 month probation when you're on your own.
So it's a little over a year then, probably by now.
Oh, yeah. Well over a year.
That's good. Keith, can you tell us about a strange or bizarre call that you dealt with?
Yeah, I remember, and this actually happened when I was training a rookie, and we were just about to mark out for lunch, and we heard this call go out, and it was toned, and it came out as a shooting in progress, and it was in this area of town where there was a lot of kind of industrial buildings. I mean, it wasn't secluded by any means. It was on a main road, but I think this facility was some kind of manufacturing facility that did something on conveyor belts and machinery and things like that. And they said one of their employees didn't show back up after his lunch break, and of course this was during the day, so literal lunchtime. And they went looking for him and found his car in the parking lot. And he was in the driver's seat and had a bullet hole in his chest. Ooh. And so I'm thinking, oh, wow, let's jump on this. This is great. Rookie in training, I'll get you guys all the exposure. Take this call. It's not even in our beat, but let's take it. So we head over there, and when we go to look in the parking lot, we go up to the car. It was probably spring, summer, something like that. And the window was down. This guy's laying back in his seat. And he's got his shirt partially open, and right there in his chest, there it is, a bullet hole. He's dead. And it's like, man, did somebody just walk up and cap this guy while he was sitting here on his lunch break? Because there's no gun. There's a hammer laying over in his hand. So it's okay. What was he fighting back? What's going on? So we're sitting here getting things, getting this crime scene marked off. We're calling homicide. We're interviewing everybody we can, looking for surveillance video, thinking we've got a murder. And all of a sudden, I'm kind of, we can't touch anything, can't open the door, but I stick my head in the open window, and I'm looking down along the floorboard, and near where the door, meets the floor of the car, I see a ratchet wrench laying down there, and I see a bunch of duct tape on it. And I was like, hang on, what is this? And as I look at it closer, I see that what's taped inside of this ratchet wrench is a spent shell. Bullet, a spent shell, no round in it. And I'm like, what? Weird. And so we're trying to figure this out. And what eventually we figured out happened here is this guy had taken this ratchet. He had taped with duct tape a bullet inside of this ratchet, held it over his chest, and took this hammer and was tapping on the back of it until this bullet fired.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I've never seen anybody use a ratchet as a firearm. You're talking about the ultimate zip gun. And so it ended up, this was a ruled a suicide. Now, was he screwing around and thinking, this will never work? Don't know. I mean, he's dead. But that's what it ended up being, is he took a bullet and taped it in there and took a hammer and just held it over his chest. And I don't know how long he sat there and tapped on that thing until he finally got it right. But he didn't need a gun to commit suicide.
Wow, that's very
I've never seen anything like that before.
That is bizarre. And when you guys interviewed people, was he depressed, or did he have alcohol issues or drugs or anything?
He had some depression issues. I think his wife was leaving. I know there was things going on in his life at the time. This was several years ago, so I don't remember all the details, but there were things going on in his life that said, yeah, he's a prime candidate for suicide. Nobody else was around the car. Everything we looked at, nobody approached him. He never dealt with anybody. It ended up being a straight running suicide, but it just so happened to look in there and see that ratchet wrench and think, who has ever used a ratchet to commit suicide? And sure enough, it worked. And again, to this day, I still wonder if he really in his heart of hearts didn't think it was going to work and maybe was just testing it out, and oops, it did.
That's really weird.
And I've seen a lot of different suicides, man, but that one takes the cake for me. I've never seen anybody get that creative.
That's very clever. Very clever.
Well, I guess he couldn't get his hands on a real gun.
They say reducing the number of guns will reduce the number of suicides. Well, I guess not. You can always make something, make a gun out of a ratchet.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
There's easier ways to do that, but 10 points for being clever.
Okay. Yeah, he was creative. I was like, man, we got to give this guy an on-the-spot award. That's pretty creative.
Wow.
You should hold on to that story and then tell it during a podcast sometime, because people are going to go, what?
Yeah, I think I may have, now at this point, some of the stories I've forgotten, the ones I've told and the ones I haven't. So I may have repeated things on the show that I don't remember from the past, but I'm pretty sure I told that one. I'd have to go back and check.
That's right. There's some weird know stuff. It's true then.
It's weird, man, because you have to, you tell these stories and you cannot make this stuff up. People actually do these things that we talk about.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There are all kinds of things. I mean, it's crazy.
Keith, can you tell us about the most intense or terrifying call you've responded to?
Yeah. And I don't know if it was so much terrifying as it was intense. And I was cut loose at this time. And so again, I was brand new. I was in my rookie solo year, because I got cut loose around December, and this was probably that following spring. And it was me and one of my classmates, a real good friend of mine. We were working together in the same beat, and we got this call at an apartment complex, and we go and we talk to this complainant, who says, well, my sister lives over at in the other building over there, and I think she might be being held hostage. I think her ex-boyfriend is there, and when I called her on the phone, she seemed real nervous, and she really couldn't talk, and I'm afraid he's there. He might be holding her hostage. And so we're okay, well, let's go over. Let's check it out. So we walk over. We kind of look around. It's a second-story apartment. We knock on the door, and after a few knocks, she opens it up, and there's this girl standing there with this just terrified look on her face, mouth wide open, eyes wide open, sees it's the police, like, oh my God. And right about that time, we notice that the blinds that go out onto the balcony are kind of moving back and forth, like somebody's just gone through them. Well, the very next thing I hear is somebody hitting the ground, and I step around the corner, because we're kind of in a breezeway, and all you gotta do is walk around to the right, and I can look over and I can see that balcony. And I see this dude had just jumped over the edge of the balcony. And so the chase is on. We get in this foot chase where we're running through this apartment complex, running through breezeways. We finally catch up to this guy. And, we draw down on him because we don't know if he's armed or not. We didn't have any word on that. We have him go down to his knees. And then right about that time, he opens up his jacket, reaches into his waistband, and we're like, here we go. And I mean, at that moment, you're like, again, we're two brand new rookies. We've been cut loose for a few months, and here we are. We're already going to get in a gun battle. And so that few seconds was incredibly intense until he pulled it out. And don't ask me why we didn't shoot him, because I don't know. But he pulls the gun out, and then he throws it to the side and yells out, "It's a toy." Oh. And I don't know. Yeah, how we were able to process that. Two brand new guys, and without we had our fingers on the trigger, both of us. We said it afterwards. Just said, how come we didn't shoot him? We were both. We were squeezing the trigger until we heard toy, and of course saw the gun fly across the pavement, and we stopped. We cuffed him up, and this was when airsoft was pretty much brand new. The airsoft guns were just now getting big, and I walked over to that thing, and it's standing at my feet. Over to look at it. I wasn't going to touch it yet, but I looked at it and I said, even from my eyeballs being 3-4 feet away from this gun, this looks like a stainless Beretta Model 92. Yeah. I can't tell the difference. There's no red tip on it. It looks like a stainless steel Beretta 92. And had he not yelled it was a toy, if we had known beforehand he was armed and just seeing him reach in, we'd have shot that guy that night, and we'd have already had our shooting, in our first year on the job. And that was an intense split second for a couple of new guys.
I bet. Ken, you've said that before too. You had pulling that trigger back, pressing it back, and then for some reason you gave him a couple extra seconds.
And that's happened out many, many times. There was one similar to this one where we were on a street corner in LA, and there was we saw this kid, and he was at a gas station, and he's low crawling up to the gas station. You know how the station attendant, the cashier's like in the middle of the pumps there, right? So he's kind of doing this combat stealthy, low crawl up to the guy, and he's got a gun. And me and my partner, we put an assistance call out, man with a gun, 211 robbery in progress, so we do our thing, and we get there, and we get up there. It's a kid, and he thought it would be funny. It's a fake gun.
Man.
So
that's scary.
How old was this guy?
Across, he was, I want to say 19, 20, something like that.
Yeah,
real young
like
guy. The girl was young too. Yeah, and it was just, and then of course after the fact we get him handcuffed because we had him for unlawful restraint, because he did use that gun to prevent her from leaving. So we hit that. It was either that or we hit him with an aggravated assault because he threatened her with it. And then he's like, "I wish you guys would have killed me. I wish you guys would have killed me. If I could do it over again, I'd have just pointed the gun at you." Yeah, and we would have. We would have.
Of course.
And it's something I don't want to do. I've made it almost 19 years now without having to shoot somebody, and I hope I can make it 11 more without it.
Yeah, absolutely. Those airsoft guns, man, those look real.
I know, and we come across them all the time. These kids have them, they play with them. Hey, I played guns when I was a kid. We used to do that kind of stuff, but you don't just walk down the street and go to the store and with this thing jammed in your waistband. You just can't do that anymore.
No.
Do they make those guns where they're they have colored tips or something like that, and the kids put electric tape over them or anything? Is that, I can't remember if that's true or not. Yeah, they'll put tape over them. I've seen them where they've been painted with black paint to cover them up. Yeah, because I've worked plenty of robberies. Yeah, I've worked robberies where that's what they've used to rob somebody with. Yeah, and I would just say to if somebody's going to think about that, only do that if you want to die. That's the only reason to do that.
It's not funny.
I agree.
It's not a joke.
Well, we had one where a guy was breaking into somebody's car, and he was confronted by the homeowner who was armed. Well, he had that toy gun with him, and the homeowner killed him. I'm sorry, I don't have sympathy for you. You run around with that thing, you're asking for it.
Yeah, those things are. A friend of mine, his son. I remember going over to his house. We went to the range, and then went back to his house to clean our guns. And his son, that was there, was like 18, and he had an AK replica that was airsoft. It was metal. It weighed as much as an AK. It was full auto. The thing was cool as hell to shoot. It shot a stream of these airsoft beads out, almost 100 yards. Incredible. Mm-hmm. But like you're saying, Ken, there was no orange tip on it. I don't know if the early airsoft guns were just replicas of real guns, but this thing was full on. This thing looked real for sure.
Yeah, you can't tell.
Well, this one that I says looked like a Beretta, it didn't have the tip altered at all. The tip was made to look just like the rest of the gun. It looked like the entire thing was stainless steel.
Ooh, that's brutal.
Yeah, I saw a picture on Facebook. Someone put a picture, and they put a picture of a real gun, and they put a replica next to it, and they said, which one's real? You couldn't tell.
Yeah, and I've done that before too. I put pictures on Facebook on the podcast page, and said, and put a toy gun up there, a fake gun, and said, real quick, real or fake? Too late.
Yeah.
Too late. If it's real, you're dead.
You can't tell.
Right.
But guaranteed, if you shot somebody like that, people would just go nuts.
Of course, that happened in Cleveland.
Yeah.
12-year-old kid points a toy gun at the police. What are we to do? And these are the kinds of things that I address on my show. What do you want us to do? I'm going to go home at night.
Was Cleveland the one where the officer that shot got fired from another agency before he got hired there?
Possibly, but it was also the one that had surveillance footage. You can see the kid he's sitting on a Tamir Rice, I think is his name, was sitting on a bench there, like a picnic table. And when they pull up, you can see him raise this gun. And I'm thinking, how is this controversial? Yes, it's sad. He's 12 years old.
And he's a big
makes
kid
me
too.
Sad.
He's big.
Yeah,
he looks like an
but
adult.
he made a choice.
Yeah, got out. The officer got out of the car and lit that kid up like that. But that's the one where the officer had been fired from another agency prior to being hired by Cleveland, and somehow he got through the background and got hired, and that was a big deal as well as far as background investigators go. That's why I remember that one. Yeah,
I think I remember that. I just remember that from what I saw on the shoot, it looked good. Now, they may have pulled his past up and really crucified him over that, but I'm thinking in that instant, forgetting everything else, what are we to do?
Yeah.
You tell me, what do you want us to do? Public, I'm not out here to commit suicide. I'm not going to let somebody shoot me, but if somebody points one of these things at me, sorry, you have put me in a position that I have made up my mind beforehand. If a gun is pointed at me, that's it. That's it.
Yeah, a lot of the public discounts how police feel and that they have feelings at all. They look at cops like, well, this guy must be like a Wyatt Earp type if he wanted to do this job. So kind of like that kid pulling the gun out and before telling you, he probably figured these cops have it on lockdown. They're not going to shoot me. Right. When I would say, hey, man, I'm going to reach for a toy gun, or I'm not going to reach for it, but there's a toy gun in my waist, he probably figured, these guys are, they're not going to react poorly to this. They kind of dehumanize cops that way, like they're robotic, like they're not going to err. And when they do, it's the first thing they report. I mean, sure, when Tamir Rice, when he was shot, they run for a picture of him in his Little League outfit. That's what happens.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
It's brutal. Keith, can you tell us about a heartwarming or uplifting situation or call?
Aw.
Yeah. It started off really sad. I mean, it's a sad situation, and it actually could fall in the category of one of the strangest things I've ever seen. We've all responded to houses, and we got a call, a welfare check at this house in my beat, and it was a teacher, and she didn't show up for work, and so we're like, okay, let's go check and see what's going on. From the outside, this house looks perfectly normal. And we went up, we knocked on the door, but you could smell this stench coming from inside. And we didn't get any answer. We start walking around the house and we start looking in the windows and we see what we're smelling. This house, without a doubt, would be the worst, filthiest, nastiest, and not so much hoarder as it is just trash. I mean, trash piled chest high in some rooms, just garbage. And I mean, dead flies in the windowsill. And we went to the back. Had the fire department with us because in these kind of welfare checks, it's possibly a medical thing. And we're knocking on the back windows. We're looking around, and then this kid, this little boy, probably 10 years old, he comes to the back and lets us in. Tells us he overslept, and mom is in her room and she's not waking up. So the only part of this house you could see carpet was the living room. Everywhere else, you're walking on trash. And I mean, food containers. Apparently, this lady loved Domino's Pizza and Jack in the Box because that was everywhere. Bags and boxes and empty cups. And when I say piled chest high in some places, they obviously hadn't even used that kitchen in years because you could not get through the filth just to get to it. Things crawling around underneath that stuff. And we go over to the back and we find, unfortunately, his mom had passed away. She was laying on top of trash and bottles of wine in the bedroom floor, and she had passed. But the bedroom covered with things you could not even get through to some places. The bed only had enough room where she could sleep. The other side of the bed was covered with, I mean, literally it looks like they would eat their food and just throw it to wherever. Bathroom, I have no idea how this kid ever showered or took a bath because the tub was filled. It looked like sewage in the tub. Go to his room. He's got this little puppy. He's sitting on his bed, which is just a mattress, the mattress is filthy. The blanket, laying there, and he that's where he sleeps and live. And the stench, is overwhelming. I mean, it's so bad. When I say it's the worst house I've ever seen, how on a ceiling fan, you've got these little chains that you can pull to change the speed and change the light, turn the light on and off. These chains were about 2 to 3 times the thickness of normal chains because they were covered with fly feces. That's how bad it was. And these flies were just bouncing off of them everywhere.
Did you say fly feces?
Fly feces. They were caked with it. Yeah. That's how bad this was. And I remember this was around Christmas time because they had actually set up a little Christmas tree in the living room. And when I had to pull this kid aside and talk to him. And I mean, this poor little guy, I mean, I still see his face. And I was like, Charlie, this isn't normal how you're living. How long has it been like this? And, he's trying to protect his mom. And so he goes, oh, not that long. He goes, we were going to clean it all up over the holidays. Of course I knew he was just trying to cover for his mom. She said we were going to take time. We were going to clean the whole house up. And I mean, we're talking about a house that took years to get like this. Mm-hmm. So, it was a really sad thing. But what made me feel good is that we got this kid out of this situation. I mean, and literally I thought about this kid for weeks after that. And we called his dad. They were separated or divorced. And when his dad first got there, I said, hey, do you have any idea what your son has been living in? Because I was kind of pissed. Sure. And he said, oh, no, sir. He goes, she doesn't ever let me come in the house. We don't ever meet here for when we exchange him. And he's never told me about that. I said, this house would be better served instead of cleaning it and repairing it to just burn it to the slab and start over. That's how bad it was in there. Wow. I mean, there's things living underneath the trash in your son's room that we could hear crawling around, probably rats, I'm sure. Yeah. And fortunately, the kid out of there, I mean, he lost his mom. Of course, he wouldn't tell his dad the situation he was living in because, again, he's protecting his mom. And so we got this kid out. We got him with his dad. I mean, in a normal functioning environment where he wasn't sleeping and living basically in filth. So it ended up on the positive for him. I was, sad he lost his mom, but man, I still think about that kid. And this was long before I was ever doing the podcast, but I took out my phone and took a bunch of pictures of that house. And I've never shared it. I don't share it on the website. I don't share stuff because I don't want to exploit that situation, but I kept it for myself, or I showed it to my wife and my kids. I said, look at this. I've never seen anything this bad. It's the worst to this day. But thank God we got that kid the help he needed and got him in a functioning, healthy situation.
Yeah, really.
Gee, how tight did you hug your kids that night?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, a lot like you wouldn't believe. I mean, there's been a lot of those nights, a lot of different calls where I go home and I hug my kids, hug my wife just a little bit tighter.
Yeah, yeah, that's people. These are all things people don't think about being a cop. I worked with, when I was a natural resource officer, I worked with a guy that had the unfortunate call of pulling out a dead child out of a pond. And it was bad for him. And you never know what's going to hit you sideways. Some guys are good with one thing, some guys are good with the other. Well, this really, I was told, got to him. He was he was sitting on the edge of his son's bed all night. Like, his wife would come and go, "Hey, you going to go to get in bed?" Yeah. A couple more minutes. He exact same age, looked like his son. He couldn't stop, just being with his son. And, since then too, this guy transferred and is now a sheriff, down south. But, that was the call for him that really tweaked him. He was screwed up for a long time.
Yeah. The ones with the kids. I mean, and most people will tell you this, those are the hardest. I mean, it's just like, I know I'm pretty good at restraining myself, but this is one of the reasons I would never go into crimes against children, especially when you hear about what they do and how they have to kind of cozy up to suspects and develop a rapport with them. I'm like, no, I would come across the table and rip your head off.
Yeah. Steve and I did an interview with a LAPD officer that he had a child abuse of some kind, and I don't remember the exact story, Steve, but where this is like 30 years ago, and he was retelling this story during the podcast, and he was he was crying during this story.
Yeah.
I believe it. It was very disturbing. He was like he was right there with him. Like you say, you can still see that house, see that kid. He was telling us the story, and he was reliving it. That was crazy.
Yeah, and the hardest part about that is, for him, we were able to get him out of that environment, but how many other kids are out there living in that same situation? Yeah. We have no idea. Because you look at this house from the outside, it's just a normal, middle-class, everyday house.
That's what
screws you just never know.
Yeah,
Steve, you remember that it was like 2 years ago that family in there's a town called Paris, California, in the Inland Empire, Keith, and they had these kids. How many were there? Like 6 or something kids. And they looked like normal family, but the kids were held prisoner and stuff. And it was weird, man. It was just a bizarre story, but you would have thought from the outside of the house, and these kids they were slaves, and they were in the house. And these weren't little kids. They were anywhere from like 8 years old to, 19 or something like that. But they'd never been out, and nobody was able to go in the house. And when they finally found them in there, it was horrible conditions.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Wow.
Keith, the next thing I want to ask you is a few questions from our mutual fans, your fans and my fans. When you were going to come on, I put on the Facebook page announcing it, and I actually got a bunch of responses and some questions. Are you open to answering some fans' questions?
Yeah, bring them on.
All right. Luke wants to know the funniest call you've been to.
Yeah, funniest call. One night, me and it's actually my same classmate that responded to the guy holding his ex-girlfriend hostage. We had moved to midnight shift by now, and this was deep in the night. This is probably 3 o'clock in the morning. We're just sitting there in a parking lot off of one of the main streets. Of course, there's no traffic. We're sitting there in what we call 42ing, where you're facing each other and you're just sitting there talking in your cars.
Sure.
And all of a sudden we see headlights coming over the hill, and we just hear this horn just honking nonstop. And we watch this car come over the hill. We watch him drive down the hill, and it looks like he's going to pass us by, when all of a sudden, obviously, he sees us and just stops right there in the middle of the street, turns into the parking lot right in front of our cars, jumps out of his car, gets in front of us, and stands at attention and salutes. And
what?
And literally, and I know this is probably PG rated, but my partner's like, what the, and I'm like, yeah, really. And he sits there and he's saying something we don't, it's something in Spanish, so we don't know what he's saying, but he's standing there saluting, swaying side to side. So, we got bona fide DWI right here. So we're like, oh, you got to be kidding. We were just about to go to lunch too. So we get out of the car, we walk over to him. It's my partner's beat, so he's taking primary on this, and I'm his back, and we're sitting there, and he starts, he's going to try standardized field sobriety, but this guy is not even going to be able to understand the instructions, much less carry them out. And so he's like, all right, man, I'm just going to arrest him for DWI, and we'll go get the blood. And he starts trying to hook him up. He grabs one arm to put it behind his back, and the guy's not fighting at all. He thinks we're the greatest. He's saluting us and everything else. And right about that time,
the way it should be.
No kidding. I was like, I wish they were all this easy. Right about that time, the guy just undoes his pants, drops them down, and starts taking a piss right there.
Oh, in front
of us. Obviously, he was full. And so my buddy looks at me and he's like, "What am I supposed to do?" I was like, "Dude, I'd let him finish. I'd just let him finish, let him get his pants up." I mean, we didn't cover this in the academy. You know, they say when that first handcuff goes click, get the other one on as soon as possible. I was like, man, I think you can take a flyer on this one. Just let him finish. He stood there, and I didn't think he was ever going to finish. And finally got his pants up, took him on, and took him to jail. But it was one of those things like, is this really happening right here in front of us?
Wow.
Usually we have to go hunt the drunks. Why is he hunting us?
And with that much pee, it was only 2 beers. Only 2 beers.
Yeah, that was it. Just 2.
Oh, man. Well, that's a blessing because he was going to let that go in the back of the car.
Yeah, you're exactly right, because I've had that one too, and that was one of the things I said. I said, "Hey, thank God he did it now." Just what were you gonna do if he told you had to go when you're halfway to the jail? As much as he just emptied out, it would all been you'd have been cleaning it out of the car.
Bad memories. Bad
That's
memories.
Brutal.
Yeah.
So Keith, Weldon would like to hear. He said, "I'd like to hear about a graphic call." Interpret that however you will.
Yeah, I mean, we could go into details. I mean, I've pretty much seen every interior bodily organ in all of its various forms through accidents and gunshot wounds and heads blown off and all that. But one that's really graphic, but it actually has a very, very happy ending. And this happened in the middle of the day. A couple of teenagers, they were driving, they weren't drunk, nothing like that. Just teenagers, too much immaturity and too much power in a vehicle. We're driving down one of our major thoroughfares and got a little too fast, lost control. He rolls the car, and he rolls it right over a wooden stockade fence. The only problem is those planks, which are a good 4 inches wide or so and an inch thick. One of those planks went right through his body. I mean, right through his gut. Ooh. And it was sticking out on one side, on both sides. I mean, it's coming out both sides. And any ordinary person, 999 times out of 1,000, you have that accident, you have that plank go through the center of your body, you're dead. I mean, something in there is going to get ripped out by a piece of, rough wood. If your aorta isn't shredded, something's going to get torn up.
Yeah, really.
This kid had no major damage to his internal organs. And so he's on the stretcher. They're getting ready to load him into the ambulance. And my partner, who was standing there with me, decided to pull out his phone real quick. He's like, "I got to get a picture of this. It's amazing." And so, obviously this kid, it was that 1,000th time, for him, because he should have gone right down to the convenience store when he got out of the hospital and bought a lottery ticket that day.
Really?
And anyway, he took this picture, and I've got it. I've actually posted on my website under a section called photos. I put some things in there, and it is pretty graphic, but this kid had no damage and he walked away from it. And I do have his permission on that video because I ran into him a little while later and I didn't recognize him, but he told me about his accident. I said, "Wait a second." I said, "Let me get my phone." I said, "This is you, right?" He's like, "Oh my God." He goes, "Can I have that? I got to have a copy of that." I said, "Sure, man." I said, "I'll email it to you. Give me your email." And so, awesome. So I said that, yeah. He's like, "That's it," because he showed me his stitches. I mean, he had these massive stitches on both sides of his body. And I said, "Man, that's one you want to show your grandkids one day, providing you can still have them." But that's that's definitely something you want to show. But that's and I still look at that picture, and when I see it, I just think it's almost not real. It's amazing. It's super graphic. So if you go to the website and look at it, just be warned. But other than that, he was fine. He thinks it's pretty cool.
Wow, it's good. It's good your partner didn't take a selfie. That would have been a little much.
Let me get on the stretcher with you.
Yeah, can I take a picture?
Yeah, let's give him a thumbs up, and put our face down there.
I would have put it past some officers to take selfies with. Look at me, man. Look what I did today. But it's a different time.
Yeah.
Keith, where can they go to see that picture? It's coplifepodcast.com.
Yeah, coplifepodcast.com. There's a tab at the top of the page. It says photos. I've got a few things in there, and that's one of them, about midway down.
I'm going to check that out. That sounds gnarly.
I'm going to look at it right now.
I don't mind looking at pictures like that when I know that the people are okay. I don't like it when people show me pictures. Like, some detectives or other people get a kick out of showing you stuff. Like, "Hey, check out these pictures I took today." And it's like, no, dude, I don't need more stuff in my brain. You know what I mean? Like, let me just deal with that. What I have to deal with. But if I know the guy's okay, it makes the picture much less cutting to me.
Yeah. And of course, I have to be very careful about what I share. and with his permission and everything, that's on there. So there's no worries about it. And it's baffling to see that and think. And I said, you're kidding me. No, damn it. Nothing was torn. Nothing was ripped. Nothing was cut. He's like, nope. I think he left the hospital the same day.
Wow. Driving with an angel, man.
Yeah.
What was that? It was Lifecast podcast?
CopLifePodcast.com.
Oh, Cop Life Podcast. You guys keep on talking. I'm going to look this thing. Now you got me all.
Okay.
So, Keith, we have John says, my two favorite podcasts combined. Can't wait for the interview. So thank you for that, John. That's very kind.
Yeah, no kidding. Thanks, John.
And the last question here, and it kind of is kind of matches what I was going to ask you anyways, comes from David. And David wants to know, what do police departments desire most from a candidate? And I kind of take that as like, advice for new candidates. What are you guys looking for?
Yeah. And for the candidates, first of all, if I'm giving them advice, it's like, man, make sure this job is for you. Just make sure this is because this job isn't for everyone.
Sure.
And that's okay. It's like my son, he's going to college to be an accountant. He loves numbers. Guess what? Accounting is not for me because I am, that's not my area. I can't do that. And the departments, they're looking, when I say what a department's looking for, I say, number one, they're looking for integrity and character. And it is, and I'm sure you guys know this from your background investigation, it's so hard to find that. Yeah. And when the economy is as good as it is, it's even harder to find that because people aren't going for the police jobs. So I always tell people, make sure you have integrity, make sure you have character, make sure you have command presence. That's a big thing because in these emails I usually answer this and always say this. These guys on these interview boards, they're looking at you and they're wanting to know, can we see this guy or this gal wearing our uniform and representing our department to the public? Can we see them being an authority? There's a reason we're called the authorities. Can you be that leader that people look to? I remember in my academy class, 19 years ago, we had a guy, because I'm sure it's like most, we have to stand up, we have the chief there and all these command staff and everything. We have to stand up and introduce ourselves and tell something about ourselves. And when this guy stood up, he was the most mousy, timid, scared person. I think we were all looking around at each other like, how in the world did this guy get hired? I mean, he had no command presence. You gotta realize you're going to be out there. You watch these guys on Cops, you watch these guys on Live PD. You're going to be that guy. You got to take charge of a situation. You got to be the leader. People are going to look to you. Can you do that? Can you make those decisions on your feet? Mentally, do you want to deal with people's problems and suffering every day? Because that's what you're going to do. Can you handle it? Just like some of the things we talked about when you got to deal with the kids that were abused or living in horrible situations. Can you deal with that? Can you use force? Are you willing to shoot another human being? That decision's got to be made well before you put on a badge and a bulletproof vest and a gun and go out there and start responding to calls. Mm-hmm. Are you willing to fight and restrain your emotions? Are you going to be able to use that quote unquote minimum amount of force necessary? Can you do that? Or even one of the questions I ask, are you even willing to engage? Because I have seen, and it's amazing, sometimes it's like the biggest guys when we do, and I'm sure you guys do this as well, where you have we called it fist man when I was in the academy. I think they call it something else now, but it put on all these paddings and you have to do a fight simulation.
Oh yeah.
You got to use your batons. You got to use your strikes that you were taught. You can't just go out there and wail, but we have seen even some of the biggest guys curl up into a fetal position and just give up when they're fighting with this guy. And then on the flip side, we've seen some of the smallest people, whoop some ass, figuratively speaking, doing everything they're supposed to do. Can you do that?
Mm-hmm.
I think make sure this job is for you.
I think they call that red man out here because it's a big red suit.
Yeah, and I've seen that one before too. I know some of the departments around here, it's a red suit. We called it fist man. I think they call it something different now. I don't know. But,
I think fist makes the suit too. That's why. Yeah.
Yeah, it was called the fist suit. I remember. Also, physical conditioning. You depend on your body to do your job. Well, it may save your life. You've got to exercise that. That's extremely important. And I don't preach anything on my podcast that I don't practice in my own life. I stay in the best shape that I can, and because I know this body's might have to take care of me. I might have to to fight at full speed for a good 2-3 minutes before backup arrives.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would tell the candidates, can you be happier doing anything else? If you can, by all means, go do that. Because, again, I want to encourage the people that want to do this job, but I also want to weed out the ones, and I don't even want to say bad cops, but people that shouldn't be cops. I don't want them to be working the streets with us. I want them to really sit down and self-evaluate, is this for me? Yeah, it looks cool on television, but it's a whole different story when you're living it and you're doing it. Is this really for you? To the officers, I would say what I used to say to recruits all the time. You need to learn how to interact with people. Learn when to take it up a notch. Learn when to bring it down. And if anything else, common sense will take you so far in this job. It's like the old saying that says, whoever called it common sense apparently didn't know that many people, because not that many people have it. If you have it, use your common sense, treat people right. As I always say, be as nice to people as they will allow you to be. Just yesterday, I worked this accident involving this 16-year-old kid. He screwed up. He messed up. He ran a red light. He caused an accident. It was his fault. He admitted to it. And I was like, hey, man, don't beat yourself up over this. I mean, his mom was there. He was all down on himself. I said, you're 16 years old. It happened. You screwed up. Move on with it. And the mom pulled me aside later and thanked me for being so nice. I'm like, really? I'm just being me. That's what I do, And of course, don't mistake the kindness for weakness. There's a time you have to amp it up. But I've been around and seen enough cops that show up to the calls and they agitate and antagonize situations that don't need to be antagonized.
Oh yeah,
they're so freaking badge heavy, and it pisses me off. And I mean, I have given recruits tongue lashings in the car before, because it's like, why are you treating him like that? That guy was completely cooperative with you. It's not like he's a scumbag. You're going to treat this guy differently than you are a burglary in progress when you're confronting a felon. Yeah, it's a whole different story, but you don't have to escalate, de-escalate. There's so much that you can remedy by just learning how to interact with people and learning how to deal with them and using your brain before before you have to go using physical strength.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Keith, I just got a text message from Ken, and I'm looking at somebody with a 2x4 through their abdomen. And
oh my gosh.
I figured out how he survived and why he's so super tough. He has orange hair. It's orange hair.
Yeah. He looks like Carrot Top.
That's what it is.
He looked like Carrot Top.
Yeah, I got orange hair as well, and I'm super tough as well. So that's why.
I'm looking at this picture, and all I can think of is God breathed down on this young man and said, "Not today, Satan."
You got that right.
That is not. I was thinking it was like a little a little piece of wood or something. This is a freaking 2x4.
No, dude, that's a plank. Yeah.
Wow, man.
My goodness.
I would encourage all the listeners to go to Keith's page.
I don't feel so good.
Look at this thing. It's not gross. It's like, what?
Yeah, it's not super gory, but it is amazing.
It's fascinating, and there is no editing done on that. That's the straight photo, man. I'm still blown. I still look at that thing and go, how did he do that?
God.
That's exactly right, man.
My goodness. That is amazing. Keith, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. You had some great stories, brother. They were really, really, really fun.
It was my pleasure. I've listened to some of your episodes, and I've really enjoyed your interviews.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. And where can people get at you?
Oh, well, thanks for asking. Obviously, the website, coplifepodcast.com. If they want to just email me directly, it's keith@coplifepodcast.com. And then the show is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Awesome. Great. And if you are looking to become a police officer and you need someone to guide you through, I can think of no one better than Ken Roybal to be your background consultant. And Ken, you are at policebackground.net.
Policebackground.net. That's where we are. We're on Facebook and Instagram, and you can get us at the website too, www.policebackground.net. So, yeah.
And Keith, I have to tell you, I saw that you had merch on your website, so now I have merch. So if you,
awesome.
You can go to Police Cop Life podcast.com and get his merch, or you can go to thingspolicec.com and get that merch. You should get both merches. You should have both.
Merch
like
there you go.
Cop Life hat.
I can't think of a better idea. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. Load up those carts, baby.
That's right.
I'm gonna send pictures to Steve going, look at this Cop Life stuff I got.
Oh
And he's
my!
like,
How dare you?
haven't bought anything from me yet. Oh, sorry, man.
Oh man! All right,
That's
Keith. Well,
great.
thank you so much, brother.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, see ya.
All right.
Bye.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you'd like to support the show, go over to thingspolicec.com. When you get on the website, there's a few different ways you can show some support. You can donate directly. You can do a one-time donation or a monthly donation. Even $1 helps us keep the lights on over here, pays our expenses for the month, is greatly appreciated. You can also just use our Amazon affiliate link. If you just want to buy something on Amazon like you normally do, just do it through our link, and we'll get a little kickback for that. So you can go to the website and do that, or in the show notes, I'll put a link. You can just click right through that link. And the third way is you can buy some merch. So we have coffee mugs, we have T-shirts, men's and women's, and we also have hoodie sweatshirts now. So go over to thingspolicec.com and check it out. You can also just listen to the podcast there, or you can apply to be a guest. Just scroll down and click on Be a Guest, and what you want to do is just give us a brief synopsis of your service, how many years you were on the job, and just a very brief idea of the stories you'd like to share, and I will get right back to you. So thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.